In your testimony today under oath, you denied that you were anti-vaccine. But during a podcast interview in July of 2023, you said, quote, "No vaccine is safe and effective."
Yeah, Senator, as you know, because it's been repeatedly debunked, that statement that I made on the Lex Friedman podcast was a fragment of the statement. He asked me, and anybody who actually goes and looks at that podcast and will see this, he asked me, are there vaccines that are safe and effective? And I said to him, some of the live virus vaccines are. And I said, there are no vaccines that are safe and effective. And I was going to continue for every person. Every medicine has people who are sensitive to them, including vaccines.
Right. So
he interrupted me at that point. I've corrected it many times, including on national TV. You know about this, Senator Wyden. So bringing this up right now is dishonest.
In this clip from the Megyn Kelly show, Megyn Kelly and Michael Knowles review what can only be described as the train wreck of a hearing that the RFK Jr. hearing was. You had Democratic senators who are practically paid actors for Big Pharma trying to dunk on Kennedy, and it backfired spectacularly. And within this clip, Megyn Kelly and Michael Knowles review the most embarrassing moments from that hearing. So without spoiling anything, let's get into this clip where, of course, I'll be giving you my unfiltered take.
That was very good. And all it needed at the end was that cherry on the sundae about his $1.2 million from Big Pharma, which is why he's so concerned about what Bobby Kennedy has said on vaccines.
And you notice Ron Wyden didn't attempt to correct Kennedy's correction because Wyden did know. Of course he did know. And so to Kennedy's actual point, when he says no vaccine is totally safe and effective for everyone, that is just obviously true, okay? And most Americans agree with that now. To your point at the top of the show, Megyn, the fact that doctors in hospitals try to give newborn babies hepatitis vaccines. I remember we asked when one of my children was born, we said, maybe I guess it was our first kid, we said, why are we giving the kid a hepatitis vaccine? He's probably not going to be sharing needles or going to brothels anytime soon. Why does he need the vaccine? And the insinuation was, all but stated explicitly, because, I don't know, maybe your husband cheated on you, or maybe he's going to cheat on you, or who knows, I don't know, and you think, well, that is so deeply offensive. This is obviously unnecessary. This precious little kid, I don't want to give this kid drugs that he doesn't need when he's 9 pounds or something 2 days after birth. That is the mainstream position now.
And this is what they are afraid of, people waking up. The political establishment, both Democrat and Republican elites, are still stuck in the Bush-era mindset that if they just scream conspiracy theory loud enough, people will fall back in line. But that is not happening anymore. The Overton window has shifted. You talk to everyday Americans and they know Big Pharma isn't their friend. They know the government has been compromised, and they know that the smug politicians don't actually care about them. And that's why they are panicking. They thought they could just keep the charade going forever, but the house of cards is collapsing and they hate it.
I think that the Democrats and the squish Republicans have not caught up with the tectonic shift that has happened in politics. They're still considering politics from 10 or 15 years ago. But after this election, issues like mass deportations, that is now the mainstream position of most Americans. Issues like questioning the overprescription of vaccines, the regulatory capture by big pharmaceutical companies, that is now the mainstream position for most Americans. I think that these senators who haven't gotten the message, they're just so profoundly out of touch. And if they continue to remain out of touch, it will be at their own electoral peril.
He wasn't the only one who's been, I believe, is my opinion, compromised by the amount of money they've taken from Big Pharma. Elizabeth Warren, Pocahontas, is big on the Big Pharma money. She has, let me see, I want to get the number correct. She and Bernie Sanders are the two top senators who received the most pharmaceuticals or health product donations in the 2020 election cycle when they each ran for the Democratic presidential nomination. She received just under $1 million, $822,000. And what did she do when she got her chance to question RFK, who spent his whole life suing these big pharma companies for what they've done and suing environmental toxin producers for what they've done to our lakes and our rivers and so on. Here's how that went, SOT 16.
So, Mr. Kennedy, will you also agree that you won't take any compensation from any lawsuits against drug companies while you are secretary and for 4 years afterwards?
Well, I'll certainly commit to that while I'm secretary. But I do want to clarify something because you're making me sound like a shill.
I'm asking about fees from suing drug companies. Will you agree not to do that?
You're asking me to not sue drug companies,
No,
and I'm not going to agree to that,
drug
Senator.
companies as much as you want.
You're asking me, Senator, you're asking me not to sue vaccine pharmaceutical companies. Yeah, you are. That's exactly what you're doing.
This is such a pointless argument, it's almost hilarious. Number one, every time you hear one of these Democratic senators rant about the 1% or the evil corporations, just go check their donor list. Warren and Bernie took more money from Big Pharma than almost anyone else, and yet here they are pretending to be warriors for the little guy. Yeah, sure. If Warren actually cared about fighting corruption, she'd be grilling Pfizer executives, not RFK Jr. But of course, she won't because Pfizer funds her campaign. What an absolute joke. And in this specific moment that you guys just saw, she realized she screwed up. She thought she had RFK Jr. in a corner, but he just exposed her. She's literally trying to get him to pledge that he won't sue vaccine companies, even after he leaves office. Why? What's the obsession with shielding Big Pharma from accountability? Imagine if a judge told you, hey, you're not allowed to sue this company if they harm you ever. Would you trust that judge? No. Then why would we trust Warren and these other senators who are clearly trying to protect their donors? This is the moment where it became so obvious who she's actually working for.
Kids might die, but Robert Kennedy can keep cashing in.
Senator, I support vaccines. I support the childhood schedule. I will do that. The only thing I want is good science, and that's it.
That was actually, I thought, a very effective exchange on his part, right? Because there is a difference. I understand what she was trying to do. And it's very clear he can't be suing vaccine companies or drug companies while HHS director. That's a no-brainer. She wanted him to say that he wouldn't sue vaccine or drug companies for 4 years after. Why? What is the incentive? Like that? It doesn't make sense to me to put that prohibition on somebody after they've left the office. It's not going on the payroll of any individual plaintiff who might be suing Big Pharma over a vaccine injury. Like she's saying, yes, he was receiving some payments if he pushed people to this law firm that has a lawsuit now over Gardasil, the HPV vaccine, and showed that he is getting some sort of a kickback or some sort of a payment for that referral. And he's done an ad trying to tell people, if you've been injured, you can go to this law firm. There's nothing inappropriate about that whatsoever. He's been very outspoken about that vaccine and does not believe in it. And there are some people, many people actually, who say their child has been hurt by that vaccine. But she tried to turn it into the same thing as like an HHS secretary leaving and taking a job with Pfizer, which would create an incentive while in the job to just give Pfizer a pass for 4 years. It didn't work the other way around.
Certainly not. And Kennedy had her number, and you could tell that Senator Warren's fingers were just itching for the tomahawk when he called her out. She raised her voice. She got a little red in the face. But Kennedy was absolutely right. He seemed almost perplexed when he said, hold on, you're asking if I promise not to work for the drug companies. Okay, I won't. But now you're asking, will I work against the drug companies as the HHS secretary? I'm just going to follow the science. And hold on, now you're asking if after I leave, you, Senator Warren, are clearly just shilling for the big pharmaceutical companies. And so this is the real dynamic at play here. Every nominee is going to be different. Every agency is going to be different. But in this case, it's not Democrats versus Republicans. In this case, it's not even leftists versus conservatives. It's not over some ideological issue. The sole pushback that Kennedy is getting, but it's from a powerful force, is from the pharmaceutical companies operating through the politicians that they have bought off and that they control. That's it.
Yeah, I mean, this is the real battle. It's not about left or right. It's not about science versus misinformation. It's about who controls the system. These politicians don't care what's true. They care about their donors' want. And right now, their donors want Kennedy gone. It's honestly pathetic to watch. They're so desperate to shut him down, they can't even be subtle about it anymore. They're not even trying to debate him. They're just throwing out hit pieces and hoping something sticks. The mask is off, folks.
So the question that remains to be seen is, can Bobby Kennedy, with the backing of Donald Trump, who just won a landslide election with the popular vote for the first time for a Republican in 20 years, can he overcome one single lobby in the country, and that is the pharmaceutical lobby? We're about to get a measure of their relative power in the U.S. Senate.
You can see why they're scared. All right, going back now to my other least favorite senator out there today, and that is Democrat Mark Warner of Virginia. He was the governor. Now he is a senator, and he was dripping with disdain for Bobby. I mean, you could feel the negative vibration all the way across the room where I was seated. He clearly can't stand him. And by the end of his cross-examination, you really kind of wanted to punch him in the face. Don't punch him in the face, not calling for violence. I'm just saying, like a surge built inside of you of like, this guy is a total asshole. He just felt really disrespectful. You could sense his hatred. He was shaking, by the way. I don't understand these senators who like shake when they cross-examine. It's kind of what they do for a living now. But here's a flavor of Mark Warner.
If you are in this position, will you pledge that you will not fire federal employees who work on food safety, work on trying to preventing things like salmonella?
Senator, there are 91,000 employees.
So that I take that as that's a simple yes, and I'm going to take that as a no.
I will commit to not firing anybody who's doing their job.
Based on your opinion, based upon your opinion, or your political agenda, or Mr. Trump's political agenda?
Based upon my opinion.
So I guess that means a lot of the folks who've had any type of views on vaccines will be out of work.
What? Like, it's just all these snide comments. I don't even really understand. There was no evidence for that. All these people with vaccines are going to be out of work. It's just I understand you're trying to score points, but get something substantive and write it on the substance. What they kept doing was just these little snide, snarky comments at the end of RFK Jr, if they ever even let him answer, Michael.
And I think ineffective snide comments, because what was he really getting at? The question was, will you fire any of the 91,000 employees, these bureaucrats, many, if not most of whom, don't even come into the office anymore since COVID at HHS? And Kennedy said, no, I'll fire people who are bad at their jobs. Did these Democrat senators not pay attention to the election? Donald Trump ran on firing bureaucrats. The American people voted to fire bureaucrats. That is one of the main reasons that we want Bobby Kennedy in this role, that we want all of these agency heads, because these bureaucrats are ineffective. They're costing the government a lot of money. They're working against President Trump, as they did in the first term, and they're undermining what the American people want. So when Kennedy comes out and he says, yeah, I'm going to fire people who are bad at their jobs, and then the response, well, is that going to be based on your opinion or your political agenda? Hold on, what's the difference between those? Those are synonymous. Or Trump's agenda? Well, Trump picked me for the job, so I don't. These three ways of saying the same thing. Will you exercise your judgment, Mr. Kennedy, as the Secretary of HHS to lead the department? Yes.
Got you there.
The deep state isn't some boogeyman, it's real. These bureaucrats don't answer to the people, they answer to themselves. They have zero accountability, they suck up massive amounts of taxpayer money, and they actively work against the policies that Americans actually voted for. And they do it all knowing they will never get fired. Trump tried to drain the swamp in his first term, but he underestimated just how corrupt and entrenched these agencies are. That is also why they are panicking now, because as Kennedy gets in, as Trump gets in, if they actually follow through and start gutting these agencies, the entire house of cards collapses, and these people know it. And of course, that is why they are so scared. So what did we learn today? The Democratic senators have zero actual arguments, that they are all bought and paid for by Big Pharma, and that they'd rather smear RFK Jr. than debate him. And of course, most importantly, they are absolutely terrified of people like him exposing their corruption. Of course, as always, I would love to hear your guys' thoughts about this entire thing, all of these points. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. Be sure to give us a like and subscribe, and we'll see you guys in the next one.